Welcome to Skin and Soul. I'm Gwenm Carsley, a transformational body, sex, and soul coach, and I'm inviting you on a bold, unfiltered journey into the heart of our humanity through the lens of Eros. This is where we strip away the shame, dive into the unspoken, and embrace the wild, raw truth of our desires. Together, we'll crack open the taboo, uncover our deepest intimacies, and awaken the pulse of our sexual essence. Because real transformation, it's messy, it's thrilling, and it's oh so delicious. Buckle up, loves. Skin and Soul Beyond the Pale starts in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Hi, I'm Gwenm. I'm your host of Skin and Soul on Transformation Talk Radio. I'm also a body, sex, and soul coach, as well as the creator of Lubology. And welcome back. So today we're going to dive a little bit deeper into her journey, into her personal story. And I'm so thrilled to have you here. So welcome. Excuse me. I lost my voice today, so
It's okay. It's okay. I'm here for it.
Yeah, and I just want to preface this episode with we're going to be diving into the inherited wound and through the lens of past lives. But I just want to invite everyone to take a moment to think about whether, if you think that past lives are too woo, that the inherited wound is also from the perspective of parents and grandparents and an ancient lineage. And it's all of the wounds that we carry in our cellular structures, in our bones, in our subconscious, our limbic system, our nervous systems, and those things that the imprints that may or may not serve us anymore. So with that, I want to talk about your journey with your son, which is a very beautiful, real story. And you have a beautiful way of telling it. And one thing I love about our conversations is that you always show up in such a way that it absolutely disarms, and you just dive right into discomfort with such ease.
Thank you. I think we need to normalize discomfort because we all experience that, right? And so we need examples of people like me and you who are vulnerable and who can share the hard things, because this, we have so much shame underneath that we keep quiet. And wouldn't it be so helpful to know that other people are experiencing the same or similar things that you are?
Yeah, especially since we come, I know in my world, we're always supposed to act a certain way. And I know we're going to talk today around your son and also how much pressure there comes from having to be a mother a certain way or having to parent a certain way and always having to have certain feelings a certain way. And this can be applied to your child, but also a partner, etc., your mother, your parents. And so, I want to hear more around your journey.
Yeah. So my journey it's definitely started before he was born, but my true awakening happened when he was born, right? And he was really the catalyst for it all. But when we first met, Gwenm, I was telling you that I experienced a lot of sexual and vaginal pain. Which is why I was so drawn to you and your work. And that honestly started when I was in high school. And I always had what we call tiny bladder syndrome in my family, which wasn't the truth. I just had a very sensitive bladder, right? And then as I got older, I started to get more UTIs and yeast infections and just discomfort in the bladder. And I really had a hard time with sex too. And I had sex because I wanted to feel wanted, not because I actually enjoyed it. And so I'm living this life trying my best to mask these symptoms and just get through my marriages, get through my day-to-day life. And then by the time my son was born, I was in my second marriage. I became a wreck. I felt so boxed in. I was in so much pain. I had gotten a 3rd-degree tear during his birth. And so for anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's when you're giving birth and when you tear, it's like a tear from your, vagina to your asshole, pretty much. And it's so painful, right? And so I was just, doing my best, masking these symptoms, and I couldn't bear it anymore. I was in so much pain. And also I had this child who I resented so much. And, we're taught and I did love my child. I loved my son. But I also had resentment and hatred towards him. And I had to mask that. I had to hide it. And it started when he was in the womb. So, I mentioned I had this bladder pain. Well, he was sitting right on my bladder. And it was so painful that for the last month I was on bed rest. And I would beg him and my body, like, please move, please move. Right. And I thought that he was the one responsible for this pain. Now I don't believe he was the one responsible.
No, and we don't think half the time, right, when we're pregnant, that it's supposed to be such a beautiful time and it's supposed to be all glory and sunshine,
Yeah.
and not thinking about how oftentimes the way a baby rotates, the way they're sitting can be really painful, uncomfortable. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I had back labor too. So he was turned the wrong way. Yeah, right. And you just got to pretend. You got to say, oh, this will all be worth it in the end, right? Like all this pain during the pregnancy. But in the end, I ended up, with a 3rd-degree tear. I had such a hard time breastfeeding. I didn't know what to do. Like my nipples were like cracked and bleeding. And I really wanted to breastfeed my child. And that's a story that we tell too, is like, oh, for a baby to be the healthiest possible being, you have to breastfeed for sure. And I'm sure there is, there's truth to it, but at what cost? So I felt like such a failure. I'm like, I had to do this. So I resented my son, not just because of the physical pain I was experiencing, but also he would cry like in the middle of the night, multiple times a night, and I would have to get up. And it was this feeling of like, I would have to get up, not my husband had to get up. It was a feeling that I had to. And so I became this martyr. Right. And there were and I was so unaware of the stories I was telling myself, right, that everybody else around me was the problem. It was my husband, it was my son, it was my mother-in-law, right? And I was just this victim. And finally, I had it. I had gone to so many doctors for my bladder stuff, and nobody was giving me an answer. And so I decided, you know what, I have to take control. I have to figure this out for myself. I don't know what this is going to look like, but God, if you're there, please help me. I said a prayer. And I ended up finding a holistic health podcast, and it started leading me down this rabbit hole of alternative therapies, and including spiritual therapies. And so that's how I found Theta healing as one of my big modalities that I practice now. And so Theta healing is a meditation technique that allows you to access your subconscious mind and connect to the energy of the creator of all that is, God, spirit, source, whatever you want to call this. And then from this place, you can access the subconscious, even see and witness where these beliefs come from. So past lives, ancestral lives, things like that, right? Even your childhood wounding. And from that place, you can change your subconscious belief systems. And so for me, it has been a progressive journey in which I've, the levels of resentment and hatred towards not just my son, but also, my ex-husband and things like that. Like I have been able to see where these resentments and hatred comes from and realize it doesn't start with me. So, it's like, well, who do I blame? Is it me? Is it my ex-husband? Is it my son? And I don't even think my ancestors are to blame, right? It's just like, or the past lives, it's just like these experience condition us to believe.
Conditioned that come in. And I'm just wondering, so as you had this baby, and finding yourself getting more and more, I don't know, and I'm just guessing that there was a sense of disconnection with your child, and then probably also in partnership. And so what ended up happening in terms of, as you were going through this, to your relationship and your relationship to your baby?
Yeah. So to my romantic relationship, what happened was I loved him. I really did. And I still love him. But at the time I was seeking direction. I had no idea what my direction was, and I was seeking security, and he could offer those things. Even if he wasn't the right match for me. Right. And so I jumped in, and I didn't see that at the time. And so with that relationship, as I begin Theta healing, and I'm unraveling everything, and my human design, which is the other modality that I practice, I was like, oh, like I was able to forgive him because I blamed him so much for all the discomfort, I felt so alone. And I was like, why doesn't he see it? I realized he was just doing the best he could and trying to make his own dreams come true. And I wasn't being true and authentic to myself.
So
So
how
that,
long did it take for that relationship to kind of dissolve? And
yeah.
yeah.
We were together, we were married for 2 years, 3 years in total, but 2 years I was on autopilot. 2 years I was going to work in a marketing job that I hated, coming home, drinking every night, and just like being passive, not
Yeah.
really fully living how I wanted to live and just doing kind of what he wanted to do. Again, like I let him take direction, right? And
Hmm.
it's interesting. I resonate with you so much, Gwenm, because with your past relationship, like with your ex, right? It was like everything looked perfect on the outside,
Hmm.
right? But on the
And I
inside,
was
you're
crumbling on the inside.
right.
Yeah,
So that's what was happening.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
I can so relate, like when I was looking over your stuff and like how you consider yourself a wanderer. And so you
Mhm.
have this spirit that just that wants to live and experience and be curious and to feel. I know that in my own relationship, and I loved her, absolutely. That I felt really trapped. And I also had, I mean, I ended up having my child on my own and raising a son and a boy and just not having the same experience. Like, and we talked about this a little bit, where I was absolutely so in love with my child when he was born that it ended up, um, he ended up being the catalyst for healing in terms of like my own inherited wounds from a family that has always been single mothers that always basically bore girls or revered their boys in very strange ways. And so I had a very skewed vision of the masculine raising a son, but it kind of in raising a son ended up breaking so many um, just hanging back those wounds of what doesn't belong to me anymore, especially like doing this work. So, and I will have you talk more about theta healing and human design, but just knowing for myself that working through reconditioning, rewiring the system, rewiring the old stories and the nervous system, understanding far deeper what belongs to me, what doesn't, handing it back, and just has been so healing in my relationship now, getting older, especially, and finding partners or a partner that is far more aligned to what I actually want, not based on what people say you want or what you should want or what life is supposed to look like. And certainly as a mother, when you have a baby and you're told what it's supposed to look like, or that feeling of, I don't know, but I mean, imagine this feeling of guilt of, oh God, I'm supposed to be a certain way. So your son's still really young, right? He's 5. I think you
He's
mentioned
five and
he's
a half.
5 years old. So,
Yeah.
how do you feel your journey has grown, like from when he was an infant to where he is now?
Yeah. So when he was an infant, I mean, I saw him as this, kind of like I loved him, but he was such a pain in the ass, is how I saw him. And it's interesting, even today, I've done so much work and so much healing. I still, in some ways, see him as a pain in the ass because I'm in a new relationship. I have a daughter that's a healthy relationship, romantic relationship. Um, and so we're this family unit, right? And then he's coming in 50% of the time. And
Mhm.
so he's struggling with those wounds. So it's like we're still struggling. It's just the struggles are different, right? And my love for him is so much greater, but it's been a process of having to work through the different levels of hatred and resentment. And I shared with you before, and I'll share today, like some things that happened in past lives, but also ancestrally. I discovered that my ancestors, the women, often hated their sons because their sons would just, all they wanted to do was fight and go to war, and they didn't care about like the mother and so I see that in my son, and I'm so critical of my son wanting to do those boy things of like wanting to play football or, wanting to wrestle and fight. And that's when I haven't, well, I just shifted this, right? But experiencing so much like disgust and hatred for
Mhm.
that, right? Because of, the harm that it did to my ancestors, it left them alone. It left them without connection and affection.
That's
So
so interesting because I never thought about it from that angle. Because where I came from, it was that men were survival, right? So the men were revered. It was like I think that still today with my mother, my son can do no wrong. He is golden boy. That's it.
yeah.
I say short of, you go out, go postal, and she'd be like, it's okay. He had a bad day. He's a good, good
Yeah.
soul. And he is, but I'm just saying that, there was this sense of, that the men could do no wrong, and that the women in my life certainly bore all of the trauma. And so men ended up becoming this source of survival. And so not someone to necessarily connect with and love, but as a source of living. And so I can really understand this, like this relationship to this son, that where there's resentment and hatred. And it's funny because, like I said, when my son was born, it opened up a whole new world, and it actually shifted my lens in personal relationships. So I wanted to ask you how, as you realized your past life traumas and events, could you see in your relationships, your former partnerships, your romantic relationships, if any of those were influenced?
Oh, absolutely. And I'll share my most significant past life regression and experience too, and then I'll share with you, what happened after. But in this, the most significant time was I witnessed myself as this woman giving birth in like the 15th century, and I'm giving birth to an heir, H-E-I-R, not A-I-R. And I'm giving birth to an heir, and something's going wrong during the delivery, and the husband has to decide. My husband has to decide, does he choose me to live, or does he choose the baby to live? And I was present for the conversation, right, between the doctor and my husband, and they chose the child, right? So I'm there, and I'm knowing that I'm going to be dead, right? And I'm going to be delivering this child like a meat sack, right? Like just like this little holder. And I felt the time my hatred for this baby, for my husband, for the fear, right? And I resonated with it so much because in my life, right, everything was about my son, Max. Everything was about this baby. Like my mother-in-law was like, this is the king. And my ex-husband was like, everything is for the baby, right? Nothing for you. But that was my own belief system, right? He was just mirroring my own belief system. And so I saw that, right? And once I switched, I changed my beliefs to realize that I could be taken account, right? That there's no longer a choice between me and him. We can choose both together. Once shifting that belief and story, things improved so much with my ex-husband, with relationship wise. And then my son, I just felt so much more love for him after that. And so much less resentment. And what's so interesting about my relationship with my ex-husband is that it was contentious. Like I hated him too. When we divorced, I hated him. He kind of surprised me with court papers and took me to court over child support stuff. And I was pissed. I was livid. And I'm like, there's no way I'm ever going to like or respect this man. Right. And so that was sort of the beginning of the change. And now my ex-husband and I, like, fast forward, 2.5, 3 years later, it's like we're friends again. We co-parent really well. And we have, my son's daycare, they always comment like, you guys co-parent so well. Right. And it's just because, I changed my energy. That was it. Yeah. You change your energy, you change your belief systems, everybody around you changes.
Absolutely. And I always say that's why when people are like, oh, it's the other person, it's the other person. It's everybody else's fault. And why can't they, she, he just do this? What they're doing this to me. And I'm all about when you come back home to yourself, that's where things start to align. And if you're meant to, grow with someone, that person will tend to grow with you and mirror that growth. Or if it's not meant to, then there's a dissolution that happens, but at least you're coming into alignment with yourself and who you are. So it took you, though, 2 years is what I'm hearing to realize that something was up and that you started to take charge. And so a lot of damage happens in those 2 years. And so I'm just wondering, in your connection with your child, just noticing like his behavior or how he reacts to you.
Yeah. So it's actually what I'm working through right now. I think I felt so much guilt at that time that my boundaries were super loose. Like he could get whatever he wanted. And now in the last, I would say, especially the last couple of months, but over the last year, I've been working towards enforcing stronger boundaries, right?
Hmm.
And it's really kind of like he's sort of like, what? Right? And he's doing everything he can to try and like
I
get
was going to
back
say
to,
better now than in like 10 years from now when they're, yes.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and he really played on that guilt, right? And it's so he doesn't know consciously, I'm going to play on
Hmm.
mommy's guilt, right? I'm going to milk the shit out of her. That's not how it goes. It's like,
No,
it's totally unconscious. It's
it's
totally,
unconscious, but they're good at it, right? And this,
yeah.
it speaks to, we know how to get our needs met in so many different ways and know how to manipulate. And I'm going to say it starts in childhood. But we grow up with that in an unconscious way. And then we carry that forward. And then we wonder why, as we try to get our needs met, why there's so much push up against getting our
Yeah.
needs met. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it's funny. It's a big journey for me too, as somebody in my human design. So the other thing I do is I read human design charts
Hmm.
and I understand energy, and I understand that my one of my biggest unconscious challenges is finding the balance between taking care of myself and taking care of my tribe.
Hmm.
Right? That's so hard for me. I have a tendency towards codependency,
Hmm.
right? And that's been and that's where the gene keys too has come in and helping me understand that more, where that comes from. I witnessing my family's relationships in the past
Hmm.
too has really helped me understand that. Um, yeah,
Have you
yeah.
ever played with constellations?
No, no.
No, where and I believe it's family constellations, and I've just had the opportunity to witness it, but it's really an experience where others take on the role of different family members, and they can be ancestral, and it's really amazing what just shows up and how the embodiment of these people end up being very authentic to the person who's standing there experiencing and going through the process. So it's just thinking
Wow,
that might be something that speaks to you.
that sounds amazing.
Hmm.
Actually,
Yeah.
wow. Is that like in a therapy setting, or how
It's
does
in a
that?
therapy setting. I haven't done, I've just, like I said, I've just had the opportunity to witness it, but I haven't actually been a part of it myself. So, but it's something that's always spoken to me to experience, because apparently whoever gets up to represent whoever, a mother figure, a father figure, whatever it is, they end up embodying, and just somehow there's magic that happens and it gets channeled through. So when you start to speak of theta healing and tapping into source, and I'm glad I get to experience that, just that's what it reminds me of a little bit.
Cool. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Okay, so we're going over. So we are going to take a quick break and we will be right back. I'm talking to Alyssa Hawn, who is a Theta Healer and also works with human design. She's a human design practitioner and plays in Gene Keys as well. And so we're talking about the inherited wound. And I wanted to go dive a little bit deeper into our inherited wounds and how they get passed down. And we started talking about this past life that you basically the choice was to save your heir, and it was your husband's choice. And I was just wondering coming in today, how that affects your relationships with the men in trust, and how you trust the men in your life. And also, and we'll just start there because we've been chatting over the break.
Yeah. So I remember when I started doing theta healing work and started becoming a practitioner, I would attend these classes, and we would scan each other to see what our wounds were and what we needed to work on. And I got scanned, and everybody was like, it's about men. Like you have so much prejudice against men. You don't trust men. And there were, many reasons. But in that past life that we talked about contributed to it for sure. But I also had a long line of ancestral wounding of men abandoning their families. My dad did that to me and my
Mhm.
my family. and his dad did it to him, right?
Hmm.
And so it's was this pattern that we learn not to trust men. And it's so interesting too. It's not just about not trusting men too, but I also abandoned my family, Gwenm. Like I left my husband and my son, right? I couldn't deal with it anymore and I had to separate myself. Um,
And did
and
you
so
recognize yourself in that? Like, I mean,
no,
and no, you didn't
not at the
see it at all
time.
like that,
Not at
yeah.
the time, not at all. Right. I wasn't aware of those patterns. Right. I had to be shown through the creator, like in my subconscious. Right. And I think part of that too is I had a lot of resentment toward my father for that too. Right. It's like, oh well, his experience is inexcusable, right? But mine is excusable because I have this illness. Right? Like
Right.
my
And
dad
he
left,
knew, well, and his dad left him because of an, I don't know
but
if he
because of
did,
an illness. Yeah.
because of
Like
an illness as well.
yeah.
That's really
Yeah.
interesting that skipped the generation.
That's good. Yeah, my dad left
Mhm.
because of, he fell in love with another woman
Mhm.
and he left our family for that woman. But it's so interesting because I had, also inherited this wandering eye from my father. I have cheated before, too, right? But like that, him doing it was inexcusable. And so, like, I feel like I'm like the epitome, like, of like just all the wounding, just put it on me and I'll take care of it,
Mhm.
right? Like, clear, cancel, delete that. But yeah,
Yeah.
looking at myself, right? Like, I would never acknowledge that myself. I would never want to because it's so shameful.
Hmm.
And realizing though, it becomes empowering when you know that even though it is maybe shameful, right? You can change your story, you can change your programming. And it's in fact
Yeah.
very easy. We think it's so hard, right? In society, when in fact it's just as simple as asking.
It's asking, and I would say there is something about that. There's definitely the awareness of it. So,
Awareness for sure.
I also, yeah, and I took a long time because also my father had left pretty much when I was born. So I felt, I had that abandonment wound that carried through, and had a lot of betrayal with the men that in my life. And the one thing that I noticed, I also showed up, had my wandering eye. Can say that I'm actually a lot like both my parents, but had that, carried that wounding for so long, and that anger and that bitterness. And it was actually ironically, so my father, also had several women, children with several women. And ironically, he ended up being incredibly stable. So, part of my changing of the story was how much I admired how he went into a level of stability and found the love of his life, and really grounded into that, and something that I admire and was like looking for and hungry for most of my life, and carried that wounding. But yeah, it took a long time to feel into that wounding, to really own it. And once you own it though, and can really feel it, something empowering happens, and the dynamic and all the stories shift and the relationships shift.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Once you can see it, suddenly it becomes very
Yeah.
clear. Yeah. Yeah. It's just a matter of being getting that
So
safe
like
space to look,
in the,
right? To
yeah.
look at your wounding. Sometimes having an effective guide to help you do that, right? It can be
Hmm.
hard to do on your own. I was just doing, sometimes I do theta healing on people, other times I do consciousness coaching, which is like helping people get in touch with their intuition, right? And I'm
Hmm.
guiding another intuitive into questions, right? And she couldn't get it like on her own, right? Sometimes you just need somebody to help you ask the right questions or create
Yeah.
the space.
Create that, yeah, that
Mm-hmm.
pathway that leads you
Yeah.
there. So
Yeah.
then today, in terms of when you look at, so I was asking you around like in terms of trust. And so bringing that wounding into your previous relationships, how, today, when you're looking at your partner today,
Yeah.
how, how has this healing and this awareness really impacted where you are today with your partner?
Well, it's interesting my partner, his name is Andrew. And when we got together, part of why I actually chose him was because of his like loyalty. And it's interesting, but that's his programming. that's his ancestral programming. He's Irish, right? And they're like, family above everything. Right? It's
Yeah.
not like, I need me some of that. Like, that's
Mm-hmm.
good. Right. While all along, like doubting myself, and perhaps in him too, like, and everybody, there's conflicting things, right? So it's interesting because part of my soul chose him because I knew on some level, like, he was going to help me grow. Right. But then the fear-based part of me chose him because I'm like, oh, he's gonna be loyal. And that's why I chose my ex-husband too, right? Same thing. I wanted that security that I didn't have with my first husband. But since doing the work, it's interesting, like being in a partnership, like having the awareness come up. Like I can see things a lot more clearly. Like, for example, someone came into my awareness and I noticed that I had attraction towards them. And I was like, oh, what is this? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than judge myself and be like, no, Alyssa, no, or be hard on myself or even indulge my desires and then feel guilty, it's like, okay, this is happening. Let's look at it. Let's see what this is all about. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And did this start with me? Is this something that's inherently wrong with me? Right. What am I getting out of having a wandering eye?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so being able to do the awareness and the healing around it has actually given me more trust in myself and my ability to stay loyal and committed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an energy, right? And it makes me love Andrew so much more. Like I was driving in my car on the way to work today, just thinking about how much I love Andrew, right? Like how we are a team and we're a community and we're working together to create this beautiful family that's operating from a space of like love and kindness, and boundaries, with our children. And it's a process. We're not perfect. Right. But how cool is it that
that is, sorry. And because I was just thinking as you were talking that it's not perfect, right? That a lot of things that do come up, and it's not in avoiding the feeling, that spark, whatever the attraction that shows up. And I think, a lot of times we take it as, oh my God, either I need to act on it or something's wrong and I need to suppress it and I need to make it go away and I'm not going to feel it. And then whatever is there starts to fester and grow like a poison and start to be a lens over everything instead of just being with, great, I'm attracted. Doesn't mean I need to jump the person's bones. Doesn't mean I need to shift anything. Doesn't mean there's anything even wrong with my partnership. I might just appreciate the human in front of me, or maybe I'm missing some creativity in my life. Maybe I need to excite myself more. Maybe I need to tap into my spark and my source a little bit more. Maybe I need some flirtation at home.
Yeah. And I think, we also just having sex is like, it's a great way too, to come kind of back to like have that time to be intimate and come back together. Because I think even thinking about the wandering eye bit, right? Like, with kids, with life, with work, sometimes you have that disconnect that occurs. Mm-hmm. And so coming back together in an intimate way and having that soul connection can be incredibly helpful. At least for me, I know that for my through my human design, that for me in relationships, it's really important I have that soul connection, not just on the physical, right?
Yeah.
But like let's connect, let's talk, let's get intimate. Like even us right now having this conversation, mm-hmm. right? It's an intimate conversation. Like that's what really fuels me and makes my relationships great.
Yeah, I can hear that. I mean, and that's why we get along so well, is that, and totally get you, because I'm exactly the same way. I need that intimate connection. I need that, that bubble, that space, that soul level, intimacy. And one thing that I know is, in terms of, and I've lost it. It's gone out of my head. It is. I've got cold brain. But I was just thinking of that oftentimes, when something happens, like you get attracted to somebody else, for instance, and it awakens you. To me, it's like that splash of cold water that says, oh, I'm alive.
Mhm.
and feeling back into your body that makes you go, oh, what? And for me, it would be almost shame, right? If I had a thought, if I had a feeling for somebody else, I could feel this deep sense of shame, but it would definitely be sobering, and then it would bring me closer into deeper connection with my partner because we talk about it. I mean, oftentimes, not all the time, but yes. But opening that dialogue, just bringing that connection closer.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
so that's something I think Andrew and I are still working on. That like I don't want to admit that I'm attracted to somebody else, right? And like I'm sure he's attracted to other people all the time, actually knowing Andrew. But like he's yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
he's loyal, right? Like
Well, there's so much more to life than being attracted to people, right? We meet people
yeah.
all the time, but it's like who am I coming home to? Who do I feel safe with? Who do I want to wrap my arms around and also, smother in their sleep? Seems to be a recurring theme that I tend to bring up. But when you have that person next to you, I do. I'm like always like, the person I love,
Yeah.
I want to feel like I can smother you in your sleep. Um, that's love, right? You're
Oh,
snoring, I
is it?
kill you.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, and that's the like the beauty of intimacy, where those sparks that make you feel hungry, like you want something else, that you're like, oh, I'm disconnected from my current relationship. That to me is that beautiful doorway back in. And I
Yeah.
wanted, which brings me, and I want to go back to this loop of starting with, you were in a lot of pain. You didn't like sex. You didn't, you had gone through this really horrific, traumatic experience in your body.
Yeah.
And so just, checking in today where you are in your sex life, how it feels to connect and in an intimate way.
Yeah. So I want to share a story from my gyno. So this was after I'd given birth. I went to the OBGYN and I was telling her about the pain I had during sex. And she said, and it's interesting, she knew I was having trouble in my relationship. And she said, sometimes when women leave a relationship and start a new one, the sexual pain goes away. And it
Mm-hmm.
planted a seed in my head, like, oh, this is probably emotional, like
Mm-hmm.
this what is happening here, this pain, right? And I mentioned before, like I had sex because I wanted to feel wanted. um, and I think about one partner I had, and there was so much love there, and we actually only had sex one time. But I had no pain. I was like 25 or no 24, and I was like, what is this about? Right. But there was so much safety there, and there was so
Mm-hmm.
much soul connection and love.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what made it different. Um, yeah.
I was gonna
And
say the yoni knows, right? Like you can't, your
yeah.
body doesn't lie. And one of the podcasts I did was on the yoni sculpture, right? So having my vulva sculptured as well as my internal vaginal canal. And I remember him saying, and I was so worried about, God, am I abnormal? Am I like huge inside? And he said something around, I have to do this process really quickly because the material dries up, but it's also that the vaginal canal then like shuts down really quickly. And there's like this in the process, you have to move very quickly. But it just made me think of like how quickly our vaginal canals shut down when it's like, no, I don't want you fishing in there. You think about going to the gynecologist, right? The clamps, you just see her being like, and it's true. It's just you're left with this feeling of like everything shuts down as fast as it can. And so if you're not feeling safe, she knows and will
Yeah,
tell you in no uncertain terms if you're listening. Yeah.
totally.
So sorry. Yeah. So today, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, and I want to say too, it's not the fault of the men that I was with too, who, there was so much ancestral trauma there. Like my mom was one of 14 children, and my grandmother hated my grandfather. Like, she was stuck in a Catholic marriage where she had to, so there's, a lot of trauma there. So it's so interesting. I think so much of it goes back to ancestral trauma. And
Mhm.
so when you look at that and realize, okay, that was then, this is now, I can be safe. I can find somebody to emotionally connect with. I'm not stuck in a marriage that I hate, right? And I'm actually choosing not to be married at this time. I'm just, that's just how it is, right? And also, like, I'm a big believer in manifestation too with Andrew. I called him in. I asked, for the universe to send me somebody who was going to be really focused on my pleasure and who
Mm.
wanted to give me pleasure, right? And put the time and energy and effort into it. And yeah, the universe delivered too. So we
That's the
have
best kind. Yeah. The good delivering.
yeah, but in order to manifest a lot of what we want, we have to look at our subconscious, because even if we want a partner who's, going to give and pleasure us, if our subconscious believes that is a threat in some way, like for example, maybe we think, okay, if we get that, we're going to have to owe them significantly in return, right? So our subconscious will block us from what we actually want because it's afraid we're going to have to owe the person. Does that
that's no, totally. That's a beautiful example. And what I always say, to people is like that they'll say, "Oh, I want crazy orgasms, or I want to have, this incredible pleasurable experience." And really, it is about this window of tolerance that we don't allow ourselves. We don't give ourselves permission. And it's not like, of course I do. Of course I allow myself to feel everything and to go cosmic. But our nervous systems know better. It's like, again, like your yoni knows better around what she's willing to take in and what's like an absolute no. And then when we bypass it, and I want to speak to men too in this, right? That somehow we have this idea that, I think for women that we're supposed to just be there as vessels, but also to men that often don't know their own pleasure either, right? That they don't sit into their window of tolerance and really figure out what feels good and what they give themselves permission for, whether what their yeses and what their nos are. And I bring this up because I think, as we talk about this inherited wound, I like passing on our inherited wounds, and all of this work is so healing in healing the mother wound and healing the masculine, but and healing the feminine, right? So that we're in a time where coming together as a couple, whatever you identify as, right? But coming in as a couple, we really have this opportunity to show up with consciousness and to own our shit and to know what we're calling in. And the more we know ourselves, right? Like it's that, what am I calling in? And if I'm calling in someone that is really not giving me pleasure and is not suited to what I want, then why? Where is this coming from? And what are the beliefs that are being held there?
Yeah. And that's what I do. That's what I help people do, is figure out what is actually blocking them. I just did a session recently for somebody around, she wanted a partner who was independent, financially independent and stable, right? But then she had all these fears around men with money. So how can you how can you attract a man with money if your subconscious is like, no, stay away.
No. Yeah. Yeah, it's that contradiction going on. So now you're calling in and your body is, I'm going to say, very well healed.
Yes. It's interesting. I don't feel any pain at all down there. Like, it's very easy. It's interesting. Like, through this journey, I've learned that all physical ailments are emotional, without a doubt, to me. Like every headache, right? Like even if I stumble, if I trip and hurt my knee, right? There's something about that. Like there's something deeper. It's not just an accident.
Well, then we're going to talk, because I've been having these coughing fits that were just uncontrollable. And I thought, oh, isn't that interesting? Is it going to impact my ability to express today? And I've really been terrified of like just trying to keep the voice lubricated and just, but I thought, oh, isn't that interesting? What's going on? What emotionally is happening to my system to be acting this way?
Right. And the throat too, the center for expression. Right. And if we're going to work together actually. And
I know.
Here, but I would say, looking back, where did it start? What was happening when the coughing started? That's usually a good indication, a good place to look whenever you have any physical ailment, right? When did this begin? Right. And what was happening in your life at the time? So Yeah.
Yeah, and when you think about like the like, so this came to you through a past life event, right? So carrying forth an inherited wound, but I'm also going to bring forward ailments that show up in lifetimes where, there's like chronic illnesses within a family, or that can come from past lives, or just trauma from family members. And which always, I mean, I've got my own paranoia in my body. I'm like, okay, whose is this? Is this mine, or does it belong to someone else?
Totally, totally. That's a real thing,
Hmm.
and people
Hmm.
taking on other people's wounding.
Yeah.
And even human design, there's a center in human design called the Splenic Center, which is the Center for Intuition, Instincts, and Pain. And so people who have this center, what I call or what we call open or undefined, they're empaths to pain. So, if you have a headache, you might be absorbing the headache of somebody around you.
Hmm.
Well, and I know my mother who has an open spleen, like she has 5 children. I'm the oldest, and she's so connected to all of us. And that when one of us is struggling, she experiences lower back pain. Although not anymore. We've been working on that together. But she told me the other day, like, my lower back is so much better. It's been 22 years. It's been like so painful. And
Oh,
now
wow. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, but
I
that
think as
was what,
mothers, we do that though. I mean, I think definitely
yeah,
as mothers, I mean, I try to think of, um, and I try to have really healthy boundaries, even energetic boundaries around my son, because my mother was so sucking of my energy. She would often like take it from me, where she would say, I'd say I have a headache, and she'd be like, I have a migraine. Right? She's like, I feel it so much. So just that connection, and I do think there needs to be that healthy breakage, if you will, right? Just to
yeah,
keep our energy to ourselves,
right.
so that we're not passing on. Yeah, I want to say passing on generational wounds. So I just want to take a moment to circle back, because we're from where we started, and talking about your son, and just looking at him today from this 5-year-old, right? He's still very, very young. And I again, I just love the way you show up completely authentically, and to be able to say, I was resentful towards my son. I hated him in times. I didn't understand. I just had this thing. I loved him, and that's the other thing. We don't think that we're allowed to have these emotions with our children. So as you witness, you are actually giving permission for your son to have his own emotions, which I know growing up, I wasn't allowed that. I'm still from a generation of, you're not allowed to feel something that isn't, you don't have permission for, right? So you're giving him permission to have his own experience. So I really applaud you in that. And also to say that you are breaking lines where, you're breaking that ancestral, that past life wound.
Yeah, yeah. And it's a continuous process, right? There are new
Yeah.
things coming up all the time as the world changes, as dynamics shift and change, as he ages, right? Every year he gets smarter and smarter, and there are
Mm-hmm.
new challenges to navigate. It's a beautiful thing. And at this point in my life, it's like, okay, the challenges are coming, but I'm going to enjoy the experience, right? I know I'm going to learn something from it. I now know that any hardship that comes into my life, like I can learn from it. It's not
Mm-hmm.
something that's doomed to make me suffer forever, right? This is just an
And it's
experience.
not meant to make you suffer, right? We're not
Yeah,
here to suffer. We're here to experience life in all of it. And the more we clean our channel, the more we get to show up the way we
right.
want to show up in this life. When we talk about manifestation, you were saying like, oh, I want to bring these things into my life, but you can't if you've got stuff lodged into your subconscious and your nervous system, and things that you aren't aware of. And the more you clean this up, the more you get to say, oh yeah, no, I have choice. I want
Hmm.
that instead of this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Good. Well, we were just about to close up. So I just want to ask you if there's anything that you want to add today.
Thank you. Thank you, Gwenm, for making it easy to show up and be authentic and to give a safe space for me to do that. Um, And yeah, and if people want to learn more about me and my work, they can visit my website at alyssahawn.com. I offer theta healing, human design readings, and deconditioning coaching. So for people who have a hard time living life authentically or as themselves, I offer a program that helps people pull back the layers so that they can become more authentic and happier. Yeah.
Amazing. And that comes from someone who walks her talk and is absolutely open and honest. And I just adore you for it. So I'm going to take a moment and just ask anyone who is interested to send in some moon letters. If you have any stories around your inherited wounds or past life experiences, that you can share them with me at info@luvology.com. You can also learn more about my work at gwenmcarsley.com. And I hope that you come back and join me next week. All right. Have a great weekend. Thank you for listening to Skin and Soul with me, Gwenm. Join me Fridays at 10 a.m. PST on Transformation Talk Radio. Catch the podcast anytime on your favorite platforms. You can follow me on Instagram @Luvology. Ready to take the next step? Book a compatibility call with me at gwenmcarsley.com.